Welcome to the 100th episode of the Kolbecast. Thank you for joining us. On a recent visit to the Kolbe headquarters in Napa, Jordan and I were privileged to be able to sit down with Kolbe Academy co-founder Mrs. Dianne Muth. We were able to converse with her about the origins of Kolbe Academy and the many ways that God provided and continues to provide for the well-being of the school and its mission. Make sure you stick around until the end of the episode to hear a special throwback from one of our earliest episodes. We hope that you'll enjoy the show.
Hi there, I'm Bonnie, liturgical musician, popcorn and podcast fanatic, and Kolbe homeschooling mom to 4 lads and lasses of middle and high school age.
And this is Stephen, homeschooling father of 5 and director of development for Kolbe Academy.
And I'm Jordan. As a product of homeschooling, I'm proud to teach Greek and Latin for Colby online and serve as the Alumni and Public Relations Director. Well, welcome to the Kolbecast. We are very excited, our 100th episode, and we are joined with one of the founders of Kolbe Academy, Mrs. Dianne Muth. Welcome.
Hello.
We've had you on here before, so
Yes.
It's nice to talk with you once again. I wanted to kind of go back a little bit for our listeners, talk somewhat about what it's like to start a school.
It was quite an adventure because we didn't really know what we were doing. We started because, when we moved to Napa, we couldn't put our kids in the Catholic schools because they were teaching sex ed. High school was teaching TLRJ, Sheridan, and good things like that. And so we had them in public school, and then they were going to put sex ed in the public school. So that's when we decided we couldn't do that. So there were probably 10, 15 families got together. We got right down to it. There were 3 of us that decided we were going to do that. So we started a school. It was just the 3 families. And one of the families left at the beginning of the next year because they got transferred out. So it's really the 2 couples that carried it on. And we had 8 students the first year. And the second year, I think we had 10. And it was very slow. And it was financially, it was really difficult. But every time we thought it was done, something came along. After the first year, our teacher was from TAC. She had just graduated, and we had rented this little house, and she lived in it. And I think we paid her $200 a month. I don't know. So we always brought her food or had her over for dinner. So it was really like a country school. Would have been a long time ago. And toward the end of that first year, we were completely done. And someone gave us, his dad had some kind of stock that was gold, I think, stock or something like that. It was defunct. It was just no good anymore. And so it went way up, and we sold it. And that gave us like $5,000 that got us through going. So it was always something. Colby always came in. Whenever we needed something, Colby answered our prayers. We need to make sure we remember. He was not yet canonized. He wasn't canonized until the next year. We started in 1980. And so we've hit those times when things looked impossible. Okay. One time again, we were out, and he had sold that stock. Had it in some of it in what you call your stock guy. They get the stock.
A broker?
The broker, yeah. And so we had to sell it, and we were going to sell half of it. And my husband was the money man. He knew what was going on with financials. And so he sold the whole thing, and they said we only sold half. So we still had half of it there. And then they caught their mistake, and they said, we know you don't really have to do that. And we said, yes, we do. It was hard, but they let us pay it off slowly. And then, but always something else would come, whatever we thought it was the end of it.
So would you explain to us a little bit about how the homeschool grew out of the day school?
Well, when we had just started growing, we had the day school going, and Robert Spencer was the high school teacher, and he said, we've got to start having course plans. So you teachers all have to make course plans for all of your courses, and they're very skimpy at that time. And then it was something some of us just didn't feel like we could possibly do, but he forced us. And so that's what the way the course plans become developed is as they are now.
Okay, and
Mhm.
how much of a practical hands-on experience was it for you? Did you write some of these course plans?
I wrote all of the course plans for grades 1 through 6, and some of them 7 and 8. And then as we added books, then um, some of the upper level ones went to those teachers. But in the beginning, it was I was most of all those.
So I bet when you were first teaching your own children and starting the school, you would have never thought I'm going to be writing course
Oh,
plans
yeah,
for.
absolutely not. But he's a dynamic personality, and he said you have to do it. You just did it. You had to learn how to do it and do it. And yeah, so he was the one that was really the backbone of that very beginning. And I don't know where God always seemed to put the right people in the right place at the right time.
That seems to continue, doesn't
Yeah,
it?
it does. It
Yeah.
does. Absolutely. Look what we have now. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then the Wanderer put in a thing about the U.S. bishops were going to start putting sex education in the Catholic schools. And I was downstairs below here is where the kitchen is. Well, I was in the classroom right next to the kitchen. We didn't have an office person. Some friend came in later at the office, but it was so that phone rang off the wall from people wanting to know about homeschooling.
Oh.
And that's when it started. Now it just a few here and a few there, and it just ends. Like I said, every time something came up, prayers were answered. It's nothing but prayers, kids. I mean,
It's amazing that story with selling off the stocks, and you essentially got a loan because you needed all that money up front, and then you were able to slowly
yeah,
pay it back.
yeah.
And I'm sure God honored that also, the obedience of paying back what wasn't rightfully yours. But
I believe that's true. Yes, yeah, it
yeah.
always happened that way.
Yeah, and every time that we've talked about Colby, the founding and all these needs being met along the way, it's also seemed like Colby has been positioned for the future. So like kind of a step ahead of things.
And it wasn't our doing.
Yeah,
We knew it wasn't our doing ever, but it was always a financial struggle. It really was.
yeah,
But anyway, we've well, it's been an interesting journey.
yes,
And then
yeah.
we started the homeschool when we finally got a computer. We had one computer, but we were writing all of our quarter reports by hand
Mhm.
and sending them out to the parents with individual things. And we have this Father Frank Epperson. He was in the seminary and he came home. At that time, we had this big thing with the diocese where our bishop was homosexual and was put some away. And he had one more year to go to seminary back to be before he could be ordained,
Mhm.
and he had no money. So he worked for us that summer. He's the one that got us on the computer. We had no knowledge of computers, and he's now Father Frank Epperson up at he's in Santa Rosa. He's in at the cathedral. They kept him there.
Okay.
It's too good. And so anyway, so he helped us out with that, but always something came along. It was amazing. So and of course, as even COVID, I mean,
Yeah.
we were doing okay, but wow, we were overwhelmed with new people. People, I don't know how anybody can put their kids in a school where they're teaching what they're teaching kids now.
Yeah.
Public or Catholic. I
Yeah.
mean,
Yeah, and COVID it was this chance for people to see what was actually going on in
yeah,
classes. And
yes,
yes.
yes.
So that's another example of where we were prepared to meet a need ahead of time and
Well, we were somewhat prepared. It was overwhelming here at first.
that's true.
Yeah.
It was.
But yeah. So yeah. Always the right. It has absolutely got to be the Holy Spirit taking care of
Yeah.
things. Okay. So we had the big split too between us and now what's Kolbe Trinity. They started a school, broke away from us, and started a school, and it was very painful, very painful. But in retrospect, and Fran was the first one that said it. It's God's will. Okay. And it was because I think both schools would have ended up being empty, and now we have Kolbe Trinity, and again with COVID, it just overflowing over there with new students.
Wow.
Yeah. So
Even then, I mean, I wonder in the early days, even before that split, how did you guys handle conflict, internal conflict? I mean, with each other, because it's not always that everybody's always on the same page, I guess.
As simply as we could.
Yeah.
Fran was a very determined person and a very intelligent person. I mean, he was all into the classical curriculum. He was the one behind the whole thing with the classical curriculum. My husband was a money person, and he sometimes objected to where the money was going. And Margie was the personality. I mean, she just attracted people like I mean, she had so many connections. And I was just the dummy, so I sat in the classroom.
You were the secret weapon.
No, I did had none of their real talent. So I had 10 kids, and my youngest was a first grader at 5 years old, and she was our first grader. But I had to work with some of my kids at home because they struggled academically in the Catholic schools, and anyway, so I did it. We didn't know what we were doing really. And then we just got things like we were using the old McGuffies, which were great. And we came upon that was Fran doing his stuff, found the Catholic National Reader, and now and I swear by it. You know, it's, I'm still using it with the kids at the day school.
Wow.
Yeah. So,
Yeah. Could you talk a little bit about that? Your sort of routine now, how you go to the day school and you teach over there still. And...
I volunteer over there. I guess, I can't imagine what I do. I really don't know what I would do. I'm not a TV. I can only read so much. My eyes give out on me. I don't imagine. As a matter of fact, Easter was kind of hard for me because the kids were not in school. But anyway, I love doing it. I love teaching. This year I have all remedial kids because we had a lot of new ones that came in from public schools, but this time of the year, I get really excited. It's wonderful when you see these kids
Oh yeah,
really blossom.
reading and writing is what you're teaching.
Oh, you read the language arts.
Language arts.
They can't even do math if they can't do the language arts.
Right.
And really, it's
Yeah, so you go over there and teach, and then you come over to the
just
Kolbe
to check out what's going on. But
yeah, make sure everyone's working.
no, make sure I have so little to do here now because it's all done remotely, and I can't do what they're doing remotely, and there's no way I'm going to try.
Yeah. I see you have a desk in there still,
yeah.
though.
Yeah. When mail comes in, I check it in. I give it to Beth to have her scan it and send it to the proper advisors and that kind of thing. So
what is your hope for the future of Kolbe?
I see the homeschool, well, unless the government comes down hard, I see the homeschool really continuing to, I mean, with the way things are going in the world, I can see it will really continue to grow.
Yes. Yeah, I think so as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure even years ago you couldn't have expected the kind of growth that we've had.
Oh no. It was very little, but we couldn't have taken too much too soon either because we wouldn't have been able to handle it.
Right.
And I think the classical curriculum is one of the things that really attract a lot of people. And it's so flexible too. That well, not all our kids in the homeschool are geniuses, but they can get through. And not everybody's supposed to go to college either.
Yeah, that's right.
Right. I think it's just really interesting. I mean, now it's set up so that when a school goes bad, or if these things come up locally, it's nice to know that people can turn to a place like Kolbe and there's a built-in time-tested solution.
Well, that's what happened with COVID. Really, is that the word got around and they knew they couldn't do it by themselves, and especially the high schoolers, the junior high schoolers, the parents work. So many parents have to work. Both
Yes.
parents full time just in order to feed the family, and to put them in a Catholic school is prohibitive, like $30,000 a year or something for under lower education. So anyway, it's a real godsend for many people.
What would you tell a parent who wants to try Colby, but maybe the spouse isn't very supportive?
Pray.
Right.
You do have to have cooperation. And I will talk to the spouse if the spouse wants to talk to me, or any of our advisors would. Yeah, it's a struggle. You have to look at what's best for the kids, but not all kids can be homeschooled either. I mean, some of them they just would not do anything
Yeah.
because they will not cooperate with the parents. But this should start before they're old enough to be in school. So it's the way you start raising your kids too.
Yeah. I find it so interesting that Colby did not start out at all with the idea of becoming a homeschool. When I was hired, it was just starting the online academy, but that was sort of a secondary thing. It wasn't, and how it's kind of grown into now there's the online academy as well. Um, I guess if you could go back and talk to your 1980 self, what would you tell her?
I don't know what I'd say.
Yeah.
What would I say? We had no idea that this was going to happen. I mean, like I said, it was not in our hands. It was absolutely Kolbe and the Holy Spirit working through the people. It's amazing. I mean, when I look back to see 1980, and it was going to be just for a few years for our kids.
Yeah, that whole story of Maximilian Kolbe not being canonized yet choosing his name. How did?
Okay, I had this Stanley Interanti. You know him? He's from Orange County. He was an officer. We were very involved in the pro-life movement since before the Supreme Court decision, because it was already legal in California. And we met Stanley through pro-life, and he's Polish, and he introduced us to Maximilian Kolbe, and so that we had this. I think we might have brought it up to the Crotties because we were very devoted to him from the beginning, because it was an amazing story, beautiful, amazing story. And so Stanley's the one who's responsible for that. When he first came to us, we were very paranoid. So he got a hold of us, and we thought he was a spy, because we did have spies we were the first pro-life political action committee in California.
Okay.
The one from San Francisco came up later, and so we were. I who hated to speak, and I got tapes of that doctor that was big. See, I don't remember the name again. He made tapes of what to do, and I listened to those tapes. I sounded awful when I did these presentations, usually with Catholic women's groups and things that where you tell about abortion and what it was, because people they didn't know.
Yeah.
And then when the Supreme Court, I would happen to be the head of the whole thing, which I'm never a good head. When the Supreme Court decision was made, and I felt like I had failed, like it was me at all. So anyway, we kept going, and they're still busy down there.
Mm-hmm. That's what about this? I don't know the news. Really, do you know, Stephen? The
Where they at least leaked papers that it looks like the Supreme Court is like.
Yes. Oh, and it came out this morning that they're not leaked. That is really true. But even Trump said, "What happened there? That should never have happened."
Yes. Yeah.
But see, our whole systems are all so messed up. Really, so we get pretty hard for this election and get them. But it's they're not going to give up. They're not going to give up there.
Yeah, well, we did a recording together for a video one time, and you talked about the hope for the future being these large Catholic families.
Yes. Oh, yeah. This, people think things can get really scary, but what happened is that so many of our good homeschoolers and good Catholic colleges and universities, they're getting married to people who have the same values, and they're the ones who are having all the babies. We have a collection right here in Napa that graduated from our Colby Trinity, and then from Steubenville and AMDG, and with the one and on the east there. Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
TAC.
St. Mary's, yeah, all over.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so they're getting married. Many of them are staying close to that area, and they're the ones having all the babies, and nobody else is having babies.
Right.
So I'm not. I think it's exciting. I'm not going to live to see it, but you guys probably will. You're going to see the young Catholic families taking over the country, and I'm sure this is not just in the United States. Yeah, because I mean, well, look at Canada.
Yeah.
They're in really bad shape there, and it's happening there too. So I know it's going to be great.
Yeah.
We
Yeah.
know God always wins.
Yes. Well, and it's one of those things with that, the sort of behavior and ideas, it's self-destructive. I mean, so it always seems like that you get worked up and the devil's going to win, but they can't sustain
Well,
themselves.
just now they're saying the man can have a baby.
It's like,
Yeah.
what? Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine putting your kids in a situation, teaching little ones about the birds and the bees.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you don't have to, you can decide whether you're a boy or a girl.
Jordan and I were just talking earlier in the day just about that, how, and so this brings how important classical education is, because even the arguments they're making today make no sense, logical sense whatsoever. I mean,
None.
all growing up was always be who you are and don't let other people put you down and just express your personality. And now all of a sudden, in the some of the transgender issues, it's like, no, don't be who you are. Have surgery and get
Yeah.
medication so you can be something else than
And
what you are.
when somebody finds out that it really has not worked, they will not listen to those people.
Yeah.
Because some were convinced that they were the opposite and had surgeries and all that kind of stuff, and then find out it's not true. Yeah, and they're so messed up.
Yeah. Father Spitzer has really put together some great information where he kind of collects data from secular studies, just talking about how all of these issues we're dealing with are just destructive. The amount of suicides, the mental
Yeah,
mental illness that comes about because of this is just astronomically greater when you think this is an okay sort of thing. You can't break God's law, I guess.
and when I grew up, I graduated from high school in 1952. I didn't even know there was such a thing as a homosexual. It was just, I know there was a boy in the neighborhood who was a little bit different, but and I would never even thought of it then. I mean, it's many years when I then I realized maybe he was, but anyway, but it was just, it was really an age of innocence, but the evil was working at Bishop Sheen too. Oh my gosh, my aunt who was in it had given me some tapes of Sheen, and he knew all this stuff that was going on with the communists and the infiltrations, all this stuff way back. So
Yeah.
My wife's father was one of the founders of Thomas Aquinas College, and so so my wife's father, Mr. Marcus Berquist, and he was one of the founders at TAC. But it was interesting to hear about that, how they were kind of on the communist hit list because they could recognize the damage that this great education would do against their cause. That's really interesting to me.
Wow.
You must have known the Schaeffers.
I know them a little bit. I'm sure my wife knows them much better.
The young Schaeffer, she taught for us.
Okay.
Yeah, she was here for several years in the early years.
That's the TAC, the first Thomas Aquinas College.
Yeah.
Teacher. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, actually, our first teacher was from TAC. She came right out of TAC, and she was the one that taught in the little house.
With the little stipend every month.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, was there anything else you'd like to?
I don't know. I don't know if I said anything was worth that.
Oh, yes, you did.
Yes.
Always do. Well, I want to thank you. This is, as I mentioned, the 100th episode of the Kolbecast.
And who would ever thought of that in my day?
Who would ever thought of that? Yeah, that's right. So yeah, we've been glad to get you on here in the past, and thank you for doing this. Maybe you can come back for episode 200.
Oh, please let me go home sometime.
Yeah, that's
real home.
All right. Well, thank you again. I really appreciate it.
It's good time seeing you guys again too. I'm glad you have these things here.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
For the greater glory of God, welcome to a special episode of the Kolbecast. I'm Hope, a Kolbe alumna in a phase of life after being a student and before being a parent. I studied communication theory and philosophy in college, then went to law school. Now I'm a complex litigation attorney, an avid home cook, and the fun aunt to my co-host Bonnie's kids.
And I'm Bonnie, Hope's big sister. I'm living out the day-to-day homeschooling reality with 4 bairns in grades between 5th and 10th. We're starting our 4th year of homeschooling with Colby this week. I'm a liturgical musician, podcast fanatic, and heavy library user, as well as a Kolbe parent ambassador. Rooted in tradition and relevant to the world today, so describes both Kolbe Academy and its namesake, St. Maximilian Kolbe, whose feast day is August 14th. How fitting that our school's patronal day is celebrated near the beginning of the school year, at least the online school year, and around the time many homeschools are getting down to business.
The story of St. Maximilian Kolbe's pious life and heroic death may be familiar to some of our listeners, but it's worth repeating for those already acquainted with him and for introducing those unfamiliar. St. Max, as we like to call him, was a Polish Franciscan priest in the early 20th century. He founded several media organizations involving magazine and radio in Poland and Japan, including the widely read Immaculata magazine, and established friaries in both countries.
He was devoted to Our Lady. He established the Knights of the Immaculata and sought to foster devotion to Mary. He upheld his own God-given dignity and that of others in the face of World War II atrocities. In 1941, he was arrested by the Gestapo and sent to Auschwitz. After one man escaped, the guards rounded up 10 men who were not involved in the escape to be punished. One cried out, "My wife, my children," and Father Kolbe volunteered to take his place. He died at Auschwitz on August 14th, the vigil of the Feast of the Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary. He was canonized in October 1982 by Pope St. John Paul II. The man whose place he volunteered to take at Auschwitz was present in the audience that day. So why is St. Max the namesake of this school? The day school was founded in 1980 by 3 families. The homeschool got going in the late 1980s and early 1990s. Events in the development and sustenance of the day school coincided with Maximilian Kolbe's feast day before he was canonized. The school was originally called the Immaculate Heart of Mary Academy, but was changed to Kolbe in deference to the bishop's request. The founding families were obedient to their bishop as Kolbe was obedient. Similarly, they were devoted to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. They knew of Kolbe from Immaculata magazine. St. Maximilian Kolbe was interested in cutting-edge technology of his time, which also describes the online academy. Both use media to further the gospel of justice and peace. How fitting for the school to be named for a 20th century saint.
Absolutely. Yeah. Kolbe's other patron saint is St. Ignatius. Specifically, Ignatian education was a particular focus of one of Kolbe Academy's founding fathers. St. Ignatius was a soldier and a playboy in his early years in 16th century Spain. In the year 1521, St. Ignatius's leg was shattered by a cannonball, which ended his military career, and he had a long recovery period, including multiple surgeries with no anesthetics. He ran out of books about chivalry and romance while recuperating, and turned instead to the only available books, which were on the lives of the saints. This led to a deep spiritual conversion. A novel of his life is on our junior high literature reading list for more detail here. St. Ignatius went on to form the Society of Jesus, often known as the Jesuit Order. The Jesuit Order is now almost 480 years old and involves ministries including education and service in 112 countries. Kolbe draws on the Ignatian model of education described in St. Ignatius's spiritual exercises. We'll talk more about the pedagogy of the Ignatian method another time, as there's plenty to fill its own episode. But for now, here's a preview.
It's all about establishing a firm foundation, cultivating a knowledge and love of God, doing all things for the greater glory of God, which is where the school motto comes from, focusing on formation, not just information, training the student's memory, understanding, and will, as well as training the student to think, write, and speak well. Ignatian education uses 3 tools: self-mastery, activity, and formation of the whole person, which we'll go into on another time.
Yes. We began this episode with Kolbe's description that it is rooted in tradition and relevant to the world today, and our 2 patron saints are the best examples of this. St. Ignatius's spiritual exercises and educational model developed in the 1500s are a guide for the formation and development of a human person, while St. Maximilian Kolbe's 20th century Marian devotion and ministry of using both established and emerging media to further the gospel of justice and peace are a guide for both our faith and our works.
Subscribe to the Kolbecast on your favorite podcast app so that you don't miss an episode. And let us know how we're doing by leaving a rating or a review. And as always, feel free to email us at podcast@kolbe.org.
Mary, our Mother, pray for us. Saint Maximilian Kolbe, pray for us. Ad Maiorem Dei Gloriam.